So, Real Madrid might not be one of the other runners and riders, but their opponents must be thinking now, look, we've got a good chance to be in the final, but let's leave that aside. Real Madrid. Was it Real Madrid? They were so poor the other night.
They were poor. I mean, Arsenal were excellent, obviously, but I think this has kind of been in the post from Real Madrid. And not just because, I'm not just speaking from recency bias, because of course they come into this game having conceded 6 goals in 2 home games against not elite Spanish opposition in Real Sociedad, who are having a bit of a dip this season, and Valencia, who they lost to in the Liga at the weekend.
Valencia, who've been bottom of the league most of the season.
Yeah, that's right.
Come on, man.
It's a game that they should never be losing. It's the first time that Valencia had won at the Bernabeu in 17 years as well. So it's clear they had issues defensively. I can understand why in Spain there's a lot of heat on Carlo Ancelotti for this. There's always going to be heat on Carlo Ancelotti when you lose a big game like this in this manner. And of course, the Champions League matters to Real Madrid institutionally, historically, more than La Liga does. That's no secret. But I do think that Ancelotti, who is one of the absolute greatest coaches of all time, did get a lot wrong in this. And I'm not saying his players stepped up to the plate or didn't let him down. They've all got things to answer as well. But straight away, I think when you look at the team sheet, you think, well, Federico Valverde at right back. Like, he's a capable right back, okay? But what really, certainly in the Champions League context, is the worst hour of football they'd had this season before they came to Arsenal is the first hour at Liverpool, when Valverde's at right back. When he's at right back, it means he's not in midfield.
And you reduce your most energetic physical presence in a team that quite lacks a physical presence, I think, in midfield. You've got to remember they lost Toni Kroos. Modric isn't a regular. You need Valverde in there as your bridge. I
mean, that's the funny thing this season, mentioning Kroos, and it's sort of reconditioned, and obviously he wasn't available for this, reconditioned Dani Ceballos. Not because he's a good player. He's not the sort of player he should really be in a good Real Madrid first 11, in my opinion. But he's the closest of the current squad to replicating what Kroos
absolutely
can do, and so that is what has got him minutes this season. But to go in there with that midfield, I mean, Camavinga obviously had one of his poorest games of the season,
and shocking exit as well.
I mean, by then it was done really. I think it's fair to say, because of course he was already suspended for the second leg after that booking as well. Modric was given far too much to do and looked lost, I thought, with the composition of the midfield. And Bellingham was having to do the work of about 4 players,
which is something that he's been criticised for from Ancelotti, and that he tries to do everything. But is there a reason that he's trying to do with everything?
Yeah, there's no option.
Yeah, he's got no other option because there's no one else there. Oh, there's no one behind me. There's no. You see, Bellingham cuts a frustrated figure, I think, a lot of the time in this Real Madrid team. There's a lot of analysis done post weekend in La Liga, and even if Real Madrid have won, you watch a few isolated clips and stills of Bellingham. Gets very frustrated by some of his teammates and what they're doing, especially Vinicius Jr.
And it's interesting because obviously Vinicius and Mbappe didn't have the impacts that they wanted. But I think that's the telling thing, isn't it, really, that Bellingham was Real Madrid's best midfielder, best defender and best attacking force. He set up the best chances that they had. And really, in a game where you're looking for Vinny Jr. to step up and make it his game, it was really we talked about it before. The link between Mbappe and Bellingham is the one that looks the most promising for them still, isn't it?
I think so. I think that's the best relationship. I think that's the best understanding. Vinicius is in a really weird space, and you can probably identify it beginning. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't too impressive before that. There was a few moments as well. But since the Ballon d'Or furore fallout, he has not been the same player. He has clearly been impacted by that, as well there's these ongoing rumours over his contract, whether he gets the big money. There's a lot of filtering being done to the press about Saudi links there as well. Something's not right in that situation. And I've said this on a previous podcast before. There's going to be a bit of a blow up at some point in regards to Vinny Jr. in Madrid. And if his form continues the way that it is right now, and his influence continues to decline, and then this contract situation rumbles on, it is going to blow up, and has to be something sorted there.
Okay, we've done the post-mortem, I think it's fair to say. What about looking ahead? We're only at half-time now. How does Real Madrid claw its way back into this tie?
It's funny because I think if you ask right at the end of this game, normally if Real Madrid have got a deficit to make up and they've got the Bernabeu next, you think, okay, sleeves up, let's see if you can deal with this. But there was more of a feeling of got to the end of that, and it's like, oh my God, have we got to play Arsenal again next week? Because Arsenal were really great, but also Real Madrid seemed so unprepared, which I think which is on Ancelotti. And I think that for them to leave the field in North London and you to say, actually, they lost 3-0, but Thibaut Courtois had a pretty good game. That is possibly the most damning thing, really.
He had a very good game. He made some brilliant saves. And don't get me wrong, Arsenal were absolutely fantastic across the course of the game. But I mean, I think it was XG of the goals was 0.14. So it just goes to show, you know, they were absolutely brilliant. Arsenal deserved their victory, but those goals, the manner that they came about, you know. But
they made them score 3 really good goals. They did. They did. A little bit like Villa did PSG, really. You know, they made them score 3 exceptional goals. Look, they needed a good Courtois as well, but I've seen Real Madrid defend worse than that recently, much worse than that recently. I guess the question is, with the composition of the defence, do you trust them not to concede a goal at the Bernabeu? That's the real question. If we're talking about their ability to come back. Now, look, the idea that Real Madrid could have a flurry and get themselves back into this game, back into this tie, is not off the table. But even without away goals being part of the rules anymore, like just mathematically, if you concede a goal, straight away you've got to score 4 to take it into extra time, haven't you?
I think the second leg is going to be more about not what Real Madrid do, but what Arsenal do. So whether they sit in too deep, whether they hold their nerve. If Arsenal can avoid that, there's going to be a 25, 30-minute onslaught from Real Madrid at the start of the game. They want the early goal, they want the Bernabeu bouncing, and they want to test Arsenal's nerve. If Arsenal can get through that first 30 or 40 minutes, I think they can see that tie out relatively smoothly. It's about what Arsenal do and how they approach it, I think, more than Real Madrid.
So what do we think about Ancelotti? We talked about the pressure on him off the back of this. I still think his future and whether he carries on next season is dependent on whether they can turn this around. So let's imagine for a minute they can turn it around. If they go out of the quarterfinals, I think he's gone straight away, especially against an opponent that is seen from a distance as beatable.
Straight away, as in the end of the season.
Gone straight away? Oh, right, okay, I thought you meant after the game. Right, okay.
No, I'm saying there's no debate about whether he's gone or not at the end of the season. If they go out of the quarterfinals, he's definitely gone. You think he's gone anyway?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think differently. I think he's gone. I think no matter what happens, he turns his tie around. They win 5-0. They then beat. They go on. They win the Champions League. I think he's gone regardless. I think too much has occurred this season. There's too much evidence there to show that this team in its current makeup and the current squad now has to go beyond Ancelotti in a different direction.
Do you think he would leap first like he did at PSG?
I don't. If you're Real Madrid, you do it in very smooth terms. In case it doesn't work out with Xabi Alonso at some point, you might have to bring Carlo Ancelotti back.
We're coming on to that because, there is a knock-on effect. If Carlo Ancelotti goes, we know who's been sitting knocking on... he hasn't been knocking, but they've been knocking on his door, haven't they?
His representative's been knocking on his door.
There's a lot of knocking going on from different sides.
Xabi Alonso, who, of course, is at Bayer Leverkusen... he was expected to maybe go to Real Madrid last season, but he didn't go. And this season, if Carlo Ancelotti goes, how certain or confident are we that he then goes immediately? Carlo Ancelotti is expected to go to Brazil, isn't he? Yeah.
He could do. I think the timing of that makes it quite tricky. So it's not a given.
It's not done.
They need a coach sooner rather than later. And of course, you got the Club World Cup on top of it. So if they get rid of Ancelotti, do they do it before the Club World Cup? And that all has a knock-on effect in terms of Brazil and what is possible there. But onto your Xabi Alonso question. Again, I don't really have a straight answer for you, because if you'd have asked me 4 or 5 months ago, I'd have said it's almost certain that Xabi Alonso will go to Real Madrid next season. But, of course, things have changed since. And Xabi Alonso has been...
What has changed for him?
Xabi Alonso has been talking to Leverkusen about the possibility of staying next season. Of course, he's still under contract anyway. But he's been looking for a bigger house in Düsseldorf, which suggests a stay. I think the way this season has panned out for Leverkusen, I think he's someone who's so acutely aware of personal growth. I think the setbacks have been really useful to him this season, and they will be useful to him over the length of his career. So whether that's falling away a bit in the league, what happened against Bayern in the Champions League, or even going out in the semi-finals to Arminia Bielefeld, the third-tier team that knocked them out in the DFB Pokal semis. So I think it will be difficult to say no if Real Madrid make an offer, but this isn't any other coach. If he feels like it's not time to go, he won't accept that. And so if Ancelotti goes and Xabi Alonso decides, actually, I'm going to stay for a further year, this leaves Real Madrid in a weird sort of purgatory, doesn't it?
It does, in a very strange position, and a situation that they will not like one bit, because they're Real Madrid and they will want everything when they say they want it and how they want it. So, and they will not be made to wait for anyone, and they will not have to deal with that situation.
Except for Xabi Alonso.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just put one thing to Andy, just out of interest? You're saying about Alonso staying there. There's every chance, let's say, 2 of Leverkusen's star players going Frimpong and Wirtz this summer. Very good chance of it, right? Is he really willing to stick around and see in this new kind of this regeneration era? That feels like a rebuild over a few years, potentially.
The future of Wirtz is not connected to the future of Alonso and vice versa.
Okay.
So when it seemed certain that Alonso was going a few months ago, it looked as if Wirtz was going to sign on and stay another year. Now the positions have maybe slightly reversed, because Wirtz has broadly had an agreement with Leverkusen to stay for next year for a number of months. He's not signed the extended contract yet. And people start to get a bit twitchy, understandably, when you don't have it in writing. And remember also, with regards to Alonso had confirmed at this point last year that he was staying.
Yes.
Exactly. So I think people look to the past for those sort of cues, those sort of pointers. But I think Leverkusen are so incredibly well run. If anything's going to convince Alonso to stay, it's not Wirtz. It's the way that the club runs exactly the way that he wants it.
Okay.
That he feels well supported, he feels well looked after. Obviously, Leverkusen's thing is to sell a big player every year. That's how they finance themselves. I still think it won't be Wirtz this year, because I don't think the money's out there, to be perfectly honest. Okay. I think there's the main club that would want him are Bayern, and they can't afford him this summer, because you're talking about a massive transfer fee and absolutely enormous wages, where there would be a sort of Dwayne Wade-esque hometown discount if he decided to stay at Leverkusen, even if he was extending for a year. So he's got good enough squad, and they're already quite far down the line in terms of who they want to recruit for next season, that I think if he were to stay, he would feel confident that he can continue to challenge Bayern.